So there was a question recently about some of the history of particularly the Mande Empire, um, but maybe also a little history of the region of West Africa that we're interested in. And if we're going to talk generally around djembe culture, where the tradition of djembe playing is strongest historically, say, we might think about areas of Mali and Republic of Guinea and the southern part of Senegal called the Casamance region, and certainly areas of Ivory Coast. Um, Djembe spread far and wide, so you would find modern djembe players in countries such as Gambia. Um, but if we were to talk about the oldest tradition, then it seems to be um, Mali and Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Casamance. And the thing that relates some of those countries and people um, is an empire that was founded in the 13th century called the Mande Empire. And so we can think of there being a common link um, to many West African countries in modern day back to that empire. And um, I've read a little bit, not loads, but um, we might use the word Mande to describe the, the whole of that empire. But my teacher, Nansadi Keita, called himself a Malinke, and my Senegalese teachers, Sekou Keita and Mokolo Swane, would call themselves Mandinka. Um, they're related, their languages are similar, but I think they come from a root culture. I think that's true. Um, there are other ethnic groups, obviously, in Guinea in particular. You have the Fula or the Fulani, and we have the Susu. And there is a lot of history around the origins of the Mande Empire in Mali. Um, and it was founded by Sundiata Keita, who was exiled. He was a prince of the royal family in Mali, and he was exiled. And then the Susu people came, and they conquered Bamako and Mali, and took control of the country. And word was sent to Sundiata, and he rallied um, allies, and they came and they took back the kingdom from the Susu people. And when I was in Guinea in 2008 and 2009, I didn't really understand very much around. There was an enmity between the Malinke people, who were my teachers, and the Susu people. And when we went on a trip into the countryside, they might say, "No, we're not going to go this way. This is Susu. This is Susu region." When I asked my teacher about Susu rhythms, he goes, "No, no, they don't play well. They play too fast." Um, and I'm sure if I met Susu teachers, they'd have something to say about Malinke people. Um, as a Westerner, a white man, I don't have too much to comment about, um, anything more than my direct experience, I think. Um, so, what more to say? The djembe music is has a certain oral history, and a bit like in Europe, we have a bardic tradition, an oral history of poetry and history and mythology. And in West Africa, they might use the French word griot, or a more native language word like jelly, and that's Djeli. And there's castes. So there is the blacksmith caste, the Numun class. There is the leather workers, the shoemakers class, and they are the Garanke. And the bards or the story keepers are the Chelis. Um, and there are lots of so musicians um, are trained in their family caste, and the so the history of an area, a region, a village would be kept by the griots, so they'd know the family lineage, the family history. And in Gambia, in particular, um, there is a very strong tradition of the kora, and the kora is a 21-stringed harp. Very famous players include Tamani Jabate, one of my teachers, Sekou Keita, many, many others. Um, and Tamani Jabate said that he can trace his lineage back 72 generations of kora players in his family, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's amazing when you try and think about just what a continuation of lineage that is. So um, we can talk about traditional music and rhythms, um, but music has always had a habit of evolving and changing. And one of the gifts I've received from one of my teachers, Hans Sutton, who's a UK British teacher, is he studied with, more than 10 Malian teachers. And he's been to many different villages, even around Bamako. And when he teaches, he'll talk about the variations through villages and across regions of the music. And so, as students, we quite like to have everything pinned down. But it's helpful, particularly when I've learned with quite a few different teachers myself. The names of rhythms are sometimes shared, or what one teacher will teach the name of one rhythm, somebody else will call it something else. The purpose of the rhythm, some of them are pretty universal, but some of them it's more fluid, and it's sort of interesting. One of the rhythms that I'm teaching at the minute is Boba Foley, and Boba Foley isn't a Malinke rhythm. It comes from the Bambara or Bambara people, and they're in the western area of Burkina Faso, on the border with Mali. And Boba Foley just means Boba music, but the Boba people are related to the Bambara or the Bambara people, and so we kind of learn generalities and we then learn specifics, and the specifics come from a particular teacher or a village or an arrangement, or for example, if I was to learn a rhythm that my teacher called Jar, traditionally Jar, D-J-A-A, is a rhythm played at marriages. But Jar would be played quite widely, but I've learnt several versions of Jar and they're quite different. So it's not so straightforward to just name a rhythm and say, oh, this is Jar, only this one. And my teacher, Nansadi, would talk about rhythm families. So the biggest family of rhythms is called the Dunumba family, or and its main rhythm is Dunungbe, and this is the dance of the strong men. So these are circle dances, and they're very, very popular in Guinea and Mali and in Senegal. But there's over 200 rhythms in this family, and more are being created all the time, but they're all based on a particular theme. So there would be maybe a big fete that was Dunumber, and maybe it'd just be a day of Dunumber family rhythms, and circle dances for men. But women are now dancing Dunumbe, and they have their own dances for some of the rhythms in the Dunumber family. Uh, Rhythms like Menjani, which is traditionally for young girls, it might be 30, 40 different rhythms within Menjani. Um, so think about a wedding ceremony that was held in the bride's village, and then at the end of that time, the bride would go and live in her husband's village that might be a long way away. But that whole ceremony might take a week. And so the first rhythms might be Menjani family rhythms in honor of the bride, and then maybe there's Soli rhythms or Toro rhythms in honor of the groom, and then Jar may be played, and Menjani rhythms, again, and it would just depend on the practice of that region and that culture. But my understanding is that the knowledge of my teachers is very, very deep. And when I talk about a rhythm, I'm basically talking about bass drum arrangements and bass drum melodies. And so when we start to shift and change the bass drum melody, we're probably going to be talking about either a variation of that rhythm or a new rhythm entirely. So if I say there are 30 Menjani family rhythms, there's something that connects them. And it's not even necessarily the time, because some of them have a 3 time, some of them have a 4 time. But culturally, there's a connection between all of those rhythms. And I think this is why the study of West African rhythm is so fascinating and deep. I mean, I've been studying for over 15 years, and I've worked with quite a lot of different teachers, and my understanding now, I think every time I learn or work with a new teacher, my own knowledge, it evolves, but the greater picture becomes bigger. So the rhythms I'm learning fascinate me. The culture fascinates me. There's no end to it as far as I can see in terms of what there is to learn. And as I share what I know, I do my best to be respectful of the teachers and the tradition. I could very easily make mistakes in communicating. Maybe I've misunderstood something that's been said. I'm always keen to learn and to listen, and hear, particularly from the masters, about their truth or what they believe or feel about particular rhythms, because they are my source. This isn't my music. This is traditional music that I've been shown and taught, and that I'm sharing. So I hope you enjoy the learning that we're doing together.